volume down so it's nice and smooth for the people. They don't have a jarring audio cut. And here we are, once again. So this week, we're going to be a little bit different than what we've been doing because we've just been kind of reacting and talking about, modern topics or whatever, and reacting to social media and everything else. But this week, we have a guest. It is a guest that you would be familiar with if you were back here before the podcast is what it is now. It was a completely different name and everything else, but same channel, so it works. We have Tanner Yackley. I think we referred to him as Blackjack the last time. And he is, well, you know what? Tell him about yourself. Instead of me telling him about you, you tell him.
Sure. So Tanner Yackley, I was in the Air Force from 2010 to 2018. During that time, I served on the MQ-9 Reaper, the big ol' drone you see in all the movies, everything like that, right? It was in Transformers, Eagle Eye. There's a whole bunch of shitty movies about them that suck and don't do well at all. But yeah, I was a sensor operator on that for a little over 10 years total. Did 8 years in the military. Did 4 years in combat, over 1,000 combat missions, just shy of 3,000 combat hours, and shy of 3,500 hours total. And yeah, taught at Schoolhouse for a couple years. Went and worked for General Atomics for a couple years as an evaluator, sensor operator there. And then taught in academia for a couple of years at the University of North Dakota. And now I'm doing the remote warrior thing. Essentially trying to help the mental health side of what we did, because there's a lot of people that are struggling with it and dealing with a lot of crap that nobody could predict, and my whole goal is just to get out ahead of it before it becomes more of an issue than what it is, because we're seeing a lot of trends with a lot of psychological issues with it that aren't currently being addressed at all, or even recognized at the moment. So we've got the lofty goal of just taking on that whole ecosystem, if you will, and trying to better it, and better these veterans' lives that are put through a lot of grueling work that not a lot of people understand. And so it's education, it's resources, it's training, it's a little bit of everything rolled up into one.
Yeah, so the organization, it's a little quiet at first, so I'll make sure they hear it. It's called Remote Warrior. I believe right now it's Remote Warrior LLC, but there's also a Remote Warrior something else coming down the line. Is that correct? That'll be,
yes, the foundation, Remote Warrior Foundation.
Okay, yeah.
Hopefully by the end of the year here we can get that rolling.
Yeah, and so and basically, get a little bit. It's funny you talked about it, but I don't think if you're going from basically its initial focus was to help remote operating, like drone operators and stuff, with a lot of the like PTSD that they end up having after the effects and all that. And then it's it's interesting. It's been really developing to where a lot of your stuff has been getting picked up by a bunch of various groups, like not just remote people. There's regular people dealing with regular PTSD and all that. The packet the trauma packet, or the what's the
panic packs.
Panic. That's the word I was looking for. Panic.
Yes.
Panic packs. Everybody really loves those. And you've been doing some. I know, like because I also work with them. That's people who have heard the podcast more in the past know that I've talked about, and I'm like, oh yeah, I love doing stuff. I mean, I'd say nothing but glowing things about my ability to work. I work as much as Tanner allows me. That's what it comes down to.
He does an incredible job.
Thank you. But I really do love the organization, and kind of what we've been. My side of things has been a little bit on the. I know you've been doing some work with people on their studies and their research. The most recent was the San Diego thing. But anyway, give the people all the goodies you're getting. You're in Business Inside Trader or Business Insider, I think is what it was. Is that correct?
Yep.
Lay it out. Give the people.
All right. Absolutely. So what we've got is like Preacher said, it's just blown up, and we've got so many different endeavors with this, right? So it started out as hey, let's just bring awareness to this. right? Let me put out a study and try to hit the veteran population, right? Because there's been multiple different studies in this. Um, and I know this because I've been studying this for the better part of 7 years. Every capstone I've done for my undergrad, my graduate, has been on this topic. On the mental health impacts of remote warfare. I've talked with a lot of the different psychologists and things like that across like into the UK. There's a Dr. Pete Lee over there that's actually one of the only people that's actually ever sat in a ground control station behind a crew and watched the psychological effects happen in real time there. And guess what? He had to stop doing it because he got PTSD. And then you talk about the Air Force Research Lab with it, and you've got a Wayne Chappelle that also had to stop studying this because he was getting PTSD. And anyone noticed a trend here with it?
Yeah.
So it's really trying to bring that in and bring in the one piece that I feel like is missing throughout this, right? Of my 10 years of operating on it, and bringing in the educational side and bringing in that operator perspective. Because unfortunately, if you didn't sit in there and hack the mission every single day, right, you just don't understand, right? So we're bringing the educational piece to it, of a lot of the issues, right, and just that can be as simple as, hey, what our day to day was, right? Because everyone thinks about drones and they think about the stupid little quadcopters buzzing around, right, and everything else, and it's like, no, this is like military drones, like they're freaking huge, and it's got a 66-foot wingspan, over 20 feet in length. The new one's even bigger. It's got a 79-foot wingspan on the MQ-9 Bravo there. So it's trying to bring general education, but also take care of this group of people that's clearly struggling, right, with it. I mean, I've got friends that are, they're getting med boarded out of the military, and literally they're having docs that are signing them off saying like, yes, you are going to have, you're going to be rated for this disability, etc. And they're looking at him and going, well, on your sheet, right? Because everybody just looks at a fucking sheet and goes, well, you didn't deploy, so how can you have trauma? And
Mhm.
it's like, dude, are you serious? Like what? So it's really trying to shatter a lot of these stigmas with it, and so that's where a lot of this has blown up and grown. I mean, I think I was 2 months into this, and then, like you said, Business Insider reached out to me, initially it wasn't even like connected with this necessarily. It's
Yeah.
just they found me through, the varying, my varying background and things like that, and I think I was still up on like the university page and everything else for my contact info. So they contacted me through that, and it kind of just worked out perfect timing, right? And right now, I think the video, when I looked this morning, I think it's sitting at like 50,000 views in the first 48 hours
That's awesome.
on it. So that one is just blowing up, which is awesome, right? And it's, you really get to see, what's what one, the comments are hilarious with it. I mean, there's so many people that are just completely clueless with the whole thing, and rightfully so, right? This hasn't been talked about.
Yeah.
Drone warfare has been around since 2001, right? 1996 is when the first MQ-1 Predator came on board. Really 96 to '08, right? Quick history lesson. They weren't utilized very often, right? With it. It was here and there. It was used as like a, hey, oh hey, we got a Predator, on station. Let's use that kind of thing, right? But then in the teens, it all switched because they realized, holy shit, we can have this aircraft that can stay up for 24 plus hours, bring in precision guidance, within a couple meters of a target, and also have this unblinking eye, right, on the battlefield, and allow people to see over that hill, over that next corner, that kind of stuff, right?
Mhm.
So this has been around a lot longer than people realize, for one, but nobody talks about it. Right? Nobody talks about what the operations were like. So then when people turn around and come out of it and go, hey, I have a problem, right? I've got an issue, like anxiety, like identity crisis, like moral injury, like depression, like suicidal ideations. I mean, you name it, right? These people deal with it all because you're shoved in an insanely high ops tempo with the entire thing, and you're having to do shift work constantly. You're having to go from home to work to home, back and forth every single day, right? And so that aspect to it is a lot of things that, one, we kind of started out and building, right, and building the educational piece of this and going, all right, let's talk about this, these areas and really bring light to it, and that's why I jumped on the Business Insider thing. It's like, holy cow, to have a platform like this to be able to actually explain, what's going on. And there's been other people that have come out over the years, right, and attempted one, or attempted to, I don't know if bring light to this is the correct answer, because I can think of one individual in my head, that has come out and just put a bad light to the whole thing, right? Because they made it very personal and things like that with it, and instead of looking at the community as a whole, within that. And so it's always been controversial, right? With the entire thing, we've always been like the what we call the redheaded stepchild of the Air Force, right? So that's the funny thing is people come out and say like negative shit, and we're like, dude, we've been listening to that for 15 years. Like, you got to get a new shtick, right? That doesn't even phase us anymore. With it, of like, oh, it's Air Force, and oh, it's just a video game, and it's like, dude, I have been hearing that since I was 19. Like, okay, so really it's trying to break down all those things, and then exactly like you said, right, we've got we've got an entire library of guides that we've created, and Preach is a big one on that. He sanity checks me a lot and makes sure I'm not out playing in the daisies, with the stuff we're putting out, with it all. And yeah, so we've got the guides there. We've got, I'm working on, thanks to the Business Insider, as far as the educational piece goes. We're working on training initiatives right now to be able to have like presentations and different things like that, out there for like units, because really there's so many areas that are missed within this, right? With VA, with industry, whatever. There's so many gaps, right? Because people just don't know at the end of the day, with it. And so we're trying to, we've got the very lofty goal of tackling all of it, right? And being able to be that one-stop shop that can go, all right, yeah, you've got, a remote warrior. Sweet. Let's, send them to us, and we'll take care of them, kind of thing. Because I can tell you right now, the systems that do exist suck. Right? Everybody's just trying to square peg, round hole this entire community, and it doesn't work, right? And we're still losing people, with it, unfortunately. We had a instructor pilot, down at the schoolhouse back in like April timeframe that committed suicide, with it. And of course, they look at it, and the individual is going through a divorce, and they go, "Oh, it's because of the divorce." Bull freaking shit. It's all that stuff. Having literally gone through one, right? It's not the root cause, and that's the part that's frustrating and the hardest hump to get over for this community, whether it's the individuals themselves or whether it's the leadership or the people taking care of them after the fact, being the VA. They just don't understand everything that's gone into this. And even the leaders, right? Because they didn't sit, the commanders, the things like that, they didn't sit and do those missions day in and day out every single flipping day, right? And to put that into perspective, a fighter pilot, right? Well, let's say, a fighter pilot that's, you know, average fighter pilot, if you will, might end up with 3,000 hours, right, over a 30-year career, right? That's not uncommon there, but we're doing that in 4 years, with it. We're doing it 10 times the rate that any other platform was. And so, you start compounding all these things, and you start looking at the things individually, and it's like, yeah, what's the big deal? But when you start layering everything, and like I've said before, it's like an onion, right? You just got to peel back those layers and realize there's so much to this, throughout, that is causing problems, and causing this moral injury and identity crisis and different pieces there. So, that's really, it just keeps evolving, right? There's every month it's like some new way to, all right, let's push the needle. And you mentioned the panic packs, right? I mean, I was so sick of just dealing. I got to a point a couple months ago, and I literally called the 988 number, right? And I was like, hey, I'm not in crisis, not like I'm completely good, but I'm like, I want to know what is your end ability, right? Like,
Mhm.
what's the end here, right? Where does your script run out, right? For what you can provide, kind of thing. Because I really wanted to identify the areas that put people in these mindsets and be able to, because I've been there myself, right? With it, I've dealt with suicidal ideations. I've dealt with, being full blown suicidal. With it all, it's like, and at the end of the day, there's no good way, when you set that phone down or hang up that call, what do? Right? You're still sitting there on the floor of your fucking room, just losing your damn mind throughout, and there's no answer to it. So I got so sick of that being the answer that we eventually broke down and took these ammo cans, these 11-inch ammo cans, and built panic packs. And what they are is just different sensory tools. So it's all grounding tools, right? There's 10 of them in there, plus an ice pack and called the insert there. And with it, it's different things. It can be anywhere from like little tuning forks, right? With it can be little clickers, right? Just being able to, because the purpose is if you're in a panic attack, and for those that have never been in one, they're fucking horrible. Um, your brain is literally in that moment trying to tell you like, "Hey, fucker, this is it. You're gonna die, right?" With it, and you're just like, "What the hell?" Right? And you're just sitting there fucking white knuckling through the whole damn thing, and it's like, I just hope this passes, right? With it, so this is meant to freaking knock that completely out, right? So you go in there. You take out this little insert that we have here that literally just has the 5 senses on the front of it. And it doesn't matter what you specifically put in that pack, right? We preload them with it, and we're working to get them up on our site, hopefully in the next month or two, to be able to start selling them there. But we preload them with 2 items per pack, or per cents per pack. So it ends up being like 10 items plus 1 or 2 extra things in there. An ice pack I'll throw in every single one just because that is so effective, right? To be able to be in that moment, and it's all about just resetting your nervous system in that moment. Right, so being able to take an ice pack, crack it, throw it on your chest, and go, "Oh yeah, all right, I'm right here, right? I'm right here, right?" Because that's what the biggest thing is. You're trying to separate, in your mind, and the way I describe it, at least for me, is, my mind is in a different place in that moment, right? It's thinking of something else. It's thinking of something illogical, ridiculous, something that I would never normally have the thought of, right? And you almost get in this death loop with it, right? And you just sit there and ruminate over the same thing over and over and over again. And it's like, holy fucking shit, somebody get me out of my own head, right? And you can't do that clearly, right? So that's the insert the panic pack, right? It's meant to be able to walk in there and say, all right, let's talk about, vision. It could be little like timers and stuff like that, right? Little like bubble timers that just sit there in the bubbles, just sit there and bounce up and down. And it just gives you something to be like, hey, stupid lump of meat right here, all right here. And just sit there and stare at it and go, oh yeah, okay, I'm here, I'm good, right? Little lavender rollers for smell, right? Be able to hit that, because that's the other piece is when you're in a, and this is an area that like I've been dealing with these for fucking years. Right? And I finally realized, like, holy shit, it really, environment can play a large factor into it. So that's why, like, things like lavender fucking work, right? It's not just this, whole theoretical, like, oh my God, you got to have all these right oils for this and blah, 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 blah. Like, no, it's just giving you a repeatable freaking solution every single time that your brain goes, oh, hey, we're doing the thing with the box. Sweet, we're good, right? Kind of thing. Because that's, that's really, when it comes down to the freaking caveman brain, at the end of the day, it's like, that's all it needs, right? With it and be able to like, hey, out of here, right here, we're good, right? And your brain just goes, oh, okay, this is repeatable. Sweet, right? With it. So that's really what this brings down to. And we've even got a little QR code on the back for a Spotify playlist that I built using music theory. I was a violinist for 10 years, and I went in, and you talking about earlier when you starting it, like I made sure there's like not any loud crescendos or like cymbal clashes or stuff like that within the actual playlist itself, and make sure everything is really calming throughout, because then you can be able to throw that in your ears, walk through the pack, do the visual things, do the smell things. There's different textured, we got like with these little like wordy stones is what they're called. They're just little silicone stones there, and you can grab one and sit there and just fidget with it, right? Throughout. So it's putting all those things into a nice pack, right? Because, and then it's different things like hot tamales, Sour Patch Kids, that kind of stuff for like the taste reset with it. And because here's
that's
the
how
thing,
I got
right?
looking like this. I had to reset my taste a lot,
Yes, exactly.
That's why I looked at that.
And that's the thing, right? Is why the pack? Why do we need the pack? That kind of thing. And it's like, Well, and especially, for me, like I got 4 kids, right? So I I can't like guarantee that if I put something in a drawer or a box or something like that,
It's gonna be there.
and
Yeah.
just that it's gonna be there, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So I can take this and go, hey, don't touch the box, right?
Hmm.
And be able to at least have something that I can walk to and go, all right, crack, let's walk through this and pull myself out of it. So that's one of the biggest things that's come out of this. And like you said, the beauty of it is it's not just for remote warriors, it's for anybody, right? Anybody can use it, anybody can benefit from it, whether it's depression, anxiety, panic attacks, right? There's so many ways that it can be utilized effectively, and the beauty of it is you could literally dump the damn thing out, fill it with all your own shit, and the script still works with the whole
Didn't
thing.
you have like? So I wanted to ask you: are you still using? You said you had a ring that people really liked. Are you still using that, or did you find something else?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because I remember you saying that a lot of people, when they notice it,
The
they love it.
Yep. These little guys, right? And it's called, if I can get my camera to focus a little bit. It's called an acupuncture ring, and it's a little metal ring with it, and these things are freaking great because you literally just throw it on your finger, and it's like squeezing the shit out of my finger right now. And these things are wild, right? I sold 75 of our panic packs to the city of El Paso because of this silly little chunk of metal right here, right?
It's crazy.
Because I looked at a guy that dealt with panic attacks, and he's skeptical, kind of looking at it, and I said, "Put this ring on your finger," and he puts it on, and he's sitting there with it, and he looks at me, and he's like, "Bro," and I'm like, "I know." I'm like, "It's so stupid how simple this thing is, but it freaking works, right?" With it, so. So that's one of the most, like I said, one of the most effective things is a silly little metal ring that you just slap on your finger, and you're like, "Oh yeah, you're like, fuck, all right, I'm here, all right, I get it," kind of thing. So yeah, that's been a super great one for it. And the comments on that too is, we're always looking for sponsors and stuff for those, right? Super easy sponsor program is being able to take like patches, coins, stuff like that we can add in as grounding tools, right? Because patches and coins have their own textures and feels, and so you can use those as your own grounding tool with it instead of things like the worry stone or whatnot. So if any organization sees this and would like, we have super easy partnerships with that to be able to throw people's patches, coins, and things like that. Where we got one organization in on the books right now that we're working to get out there and be able to have some of their stuff in the box there with it too. And we ship those anywhere in the country for $50 there. So even if someone like needs one right now, all they gotta do is reach out. I can get them one within 10 days
Hmm.
there, just so we can get the content and get it shipped out at that point. We're just upscaling at this point, so a lot of logistics and things like that to figure out with it, but we're getting there.
Yeah, I remember I think it was maybe 2 weeks ago. We were having just a meeting for the talking about stuff, but you were showing me like, oh yeah, I just ship like everything. We package everything behind me. Like that, what you're looking at is like their shipping department right now.
Yep.
And so yeah, it's like
Right
that is
there.
part of the
Literally,
Yeah,
this whole shelf,
yeah.
right, is and literally down to the you got the 4x8 label maker printer sitting right
Hmm.
there. With it, so this whole shelf houses everything, right? And I mean it can be all the way down to like coffee beans in a can in a little jar. With it to be able to sit there and smell, that kind of stuff too. So yeah, it's been a lot of trial and error, right? Seeing what's effective, what works,
Mm.
and what also just doesn't cost a freaking arm and a leg. Because right now it's about $27 for everything that goes into the panic pack, including the container, the insert, all that stuff, right?
Yeah, and then you got shipping
With
on
it.
top of it, so that's why
Yep,
it's yeah.
exactly. Yep. So
Anybody
100%.
who's ever
But
shipped anything, I mean, I don't know how some people, I guess, don't ship a lot of like large packages, but I have with eBay and stuff, and I'm like, I know the pricing is like it's crazy, like it's
yeah,
nuts. So yeah,
it's about even that we found a really good site for discounting. But it's still like, I mean, it still could be up to like $15 to ship one.
yeah,
There, and it's like, but like I said, it's completely worth it, and they've been a great tool. I had one of my good friends that I shipped one to called me a couple weeks ago and said, "Dude, I'm pretty sure that thing just saved my life last night." Because he was in a really bad spot. He sat down, he worked through everything in the pack, and he said within 2 hours I was able to pull myself back and be okay again. because anybody that deals with them, it's like in the moment, don't get me wrong, that's absolutely the worst part, but fucking close second is the goddamn come down from it afterwards. And then you feel like just fucking drained as shit.
Yeah.
Right? And you're just sitting there just like, ah. So this absolutely helps with the recovery of that because again, you're giving your nervous system that stimulation and things like that too, with it. And I know so much about that because I'm studying it right now. I'm working on a PhD in psychology. Um, which is why I've got such a vast knowledge of this area and have worked with a lot of different other psychologists and things like that. And that gets into what you had mentioned earlier, Preach, with the study.
Yeah.
We're currently working with the VA to get a study going, looking at the veteran population for remote combat warriors and being able to help them
Keep it on one
and get some different studies out for it, which would be super beneficial. And it would be the first of its kind because there's been 4 studies for this career field, notable ones in the last 10 years even, and they've all looked at the active operators, which then you bring in stigmas and everything else, right? You're not going to tell like a semi truck driver, right? If I went and surveyed every semi truck driver and said, "Hey, how many hours do you sleep at night?" Right? They're gonna lie their fucking ass off. Um, so it's the same, right? Or how many hours, or that kind of thing, right? And because of the fear of, hey, if I say the wrong thing, then I'm gonna lose my job. And the same thing happens with these guys because they go and need to work with like the FAA and stuff. If they get out and they go be a contractor doing the same thing, then they still have to maintain a medical, which means they have to be governed by the FAA then, as well, which causes its own issues and causes its own stigmas and everything else. So we're really just trying to shatter kind of as many of those as we can, get the community talking about it and being able to bring tangible resources at the end of the day to this entire process.
Mm-hmm. So I have a so is the study with the VA, was that the same one that you were talking about with the San Diego through San Diego or okay?
Yeah, they're gonna potentially use San Diego's for their IRB process.
Mm-hmm.
There, so that way we can turn around and publish it, and science journals, all that thing, with it, which would just be incredible. There, so I'm hoping. That's actually on my plate for Monday. I've got to finish up my write up of the questions and then get those back to the doctor I'm working with there to be able to get that taken care of.
Yeah.
As well.
Okay, I've got something. I want to give you the opportunity to, because I know you've already dealt with this. This is something that was on my head. I know you've already, even from people inside of your community, is the idea of like, okay, your packs cost $50, right? Oh, you're just trying to make money off of whatever. So give your no, because I know your heart and I know the organization. That's why I'm even working with it. I know it is entirely about helping people. It is one of the least like profit focused things on the planet. But you give them their shtick. You tell them the thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, really at the end of the day, for those that haven't been into a business and things like that, it's like holy shit, and then we're just starting out. But it's like there's so many costs, right? With it, there's costs that come in with trademarking, there's costs that come in with packing supplies, there's costs that come in with subscriptions, right? With all of it, so any funds right now are just going back to that to be able to reach more of this demographic, right? At the end of the day, it's like we're not. I mean, this has been running for 4 months, and I haven't collected a dime off of any of it, right? And we've raised a decent amount, in the last 4 months. I mean, it's a couple $1,000s that we've been able to bring up from the community and themselves. But that's the thing is people don't realize like it costs around $1,800 just to trademark a word, right? It costs $1,000 just to do the formation documents for an LLC or for a nonprofit, right? With it there, and so that's where we did a shirt campaign with Unmanned Apparel and raised
I should have worn my
$340 on that thing, and then it was like this whole deal of we're profiting off of these people, and it's like no, we're trying to bring awareness into it and be able to get people to talk about it because we've been suffering in silence for 20 years, right? With nobody talking about it, nobody addressing this, and everyone in the community thinking that what they're going through is either I don't deserve, I mean, I can tell you probably half the community doesn't even consider themselves a combat veteran for one, and two doesn't think that they deserve VA benefits. And that's those two things in itself are why there has to be the awareness with it, right? And I fucking hate bumper stickers and t-shirts, right? I can't stand t-shirt campaigns and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I do understand, right, the importance of it and being able to bring it in there. So we're working merchandise and things like that to be able to, again, help offset the costs. Just like we talked about, it's like, yeah, these things cost $50. We'll make like $6 on these things at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And then all it is turned around to go in and go, all right, now we can pay for some of these subscriptions, pay for some of these fees, pay for some of these other areas there before we're even paying ourselves. At the end of the day, because that's really what it comes down to, is making sure that we can stay afloat in that area. But also being able to, all the panic pack thing. I spent my own money. I've probably put a couple $1,000s of my own money into all this, at this point, and just testing what works, what doesn't, right? With it. And then the other piece to it is we've got our smart home tech. And that one is a massive endeavor that I'm constantly sitting here and tweaking, and I put a couple hours into it a week, of just essentially ops testing some of this technology, because my thought with that is essentially you have the panic pack, right, which is great, but what was a big piece I talked about with that? The environment, right? So being able to have things where if you're in the middle of a panic attack, that you can go to, like, let's say your bedroom, right, and walk into your room and say, say Alexa, do XYZ, right, with it. And if you could have like a panic mode command for that, how cool would it be to have a whole bunch of automation happen at the same time, so you don't have to run around and turn, if you got bright ass lights on, right, and you're sitting there just super light sensitive in the moment. I want to be able to have things like drop the blinds, right? I want to be able to have it set like a softer lighting or a different color lighting, whatever, there. I want to be able to have it turn on, maybe a diffuser, right? Again, to get that, lavender, whatever, orange, whatever smell rolling, so that your brain goes, oh, hey, we're good, right? Kind of thing. So we've actually got on our site, on our resource site, the breakdown of like how the smart home tech works. And right now, I mean, like I said, I'm not doing a subscription base. I'm not saying, oh, to access this, you got to pay me, $10 a month for this newsletter or anything like that. Like, it's all out there. The whole library is sitting out there for free, right? The guides for you could literally go and build your own panic pack, right? And not even purchase one from us, because we have all the info out there, for it. And then all the way down to the smart home tech too. I sat and curated out a site and kind of gave it different tiers, just depending on people's budgets, on how they want to, add things in. And it's additional things like, I'm in a 1940s farmhouse. And so I've, of course, have, just impeccable plumbing, that works all the time. Right. So, so I went out and got little, water sensors, that I can set behind the toilets. And that way, because I had one that was just constantly freaking leaking on me, and I was sitting there troubleshooting it for like a month and a half. It was driving me insane. And now I don't have to sit there and worry about that anymore, because I've got a water sensor that sits right behind it that tells me, hey, this thing's leaking, again, kind of thing. And so it's being able to incorporate all these different pieces to it that people wouldn't necessarily think about, right? With it, and that's really where we've got the lofty goal of, with like, adaptive housing, to be able to look and keep it more of a mental health focus. What if you had, soft closed drawers for people that have a really high, startle response, right? What if same thing for the doors themselves, right? Being able to have, specific latches, different things like that, that can help people not, I mean, I got 4 kids running through the house. It's like freaking every time somebody goes to the bathroom, the door just, and I'm just if I'm anywhere near it, I'm just like, yeah, all right, I'm awake, and
Yeah.
so it's being able to try to slow some of that stuff down too, because that's one thing I found is a lot of things with especially like adaptive housing. There's a ton for physical, right? With
Mhm.
it, you can get ramps, you can get wider doorways, you can get walk-in showers. But what if we looked at it a little bit differently and said, well, let's change the lighting, right? Let's change, the doors to be, closed a little differently so they're not so loud, right? Let's put, soundproofing in rooms to be able to, help, for if things get dropped upstairs or whatever, kind of thing there. And even, and then even more like therapeutic spaces. So it's really trying to build this ecosystem that would help facilitate, someone with mental health struggles. And that's the beauty is, it could branch to, my stepson's got slight autism with
Mhm.
it. And I always keep him in the back of my mind with all this of going, well, wow, this could really benefit, that side too. And give parents, and a place that they can, have their child go and feel okay and feel safe, right? We do it in schools, right? You got sensory rooms and things like that, but
Yep.
that's my biggest thing with all of this, right? And that's been my driving force for all this. Of all the therapies I've been through, of all the retreats I've been to, right? They're fantastic, right? They are really great. But what happens when you come home, right? And that
Mhm.
plane touches back down, or, you know, you get out of that 1 hour therapy session and you come back home and you're just like, well, fuck, here I am, right? Back in the same soup, right? Because we don't focus on that aspect to it. And I think it would be exceptionally beneficial across the board with giving somebody that space and giving them a place that, regardless of what they deal with, that they can their body their not just their mind but their body
Yeah.
can feel content and okay in.
Actually, kind of along those lines, I'm going to use the bathroom in a minute, but I'm just going to give you a lead in here. I know that we were also talking about doing some stuff with like service animals and dogs and stuff, and I know you have one that's wonderful. So, like, if you could talk about how that fits into the program as a whole, but also just you and your personal story and how it worked for you and all that. And I'll have my headset on so I can hear, and I'll be right back. So,
Yeah, no, of course. um so I've got a service dog. He's a yellow lab. His name's Hawk. I've been with him for 3 years now. This next month actually. He's incredible, right? He travels with me everywhere. He's actually at the very end of the Business Insider interview. They videoed him a whole bunch at the very end, and it's hilarious because you can see his personality come out just instantly. He's sitting in my lap in the chair. He's just a comedian when it comes down to it. He's got such a personality. But service dogs in general are one to get it out there. Right, service dogs are different than like emotional support animals, different things like that, right? The service dog is meant to be paired with one person for and be able to help in one way, right? That could be reminding of medications. That could be helping someone if they get seizures. It could be things like if someone deals with oh, what's the word I'm looking for? Not premonitions, but be like seeing things and stuff like that, right? That potentially aren't there. Dogs can actually help with that. It's really intriguing. That's probably one of the more fascinating ones with it. Or, for Hawk and I, he does a lot with enabling and helping me with my surroundings because I jump startle a lot. So if someone like comes up really quick behind me and like, hey, how's it going? I'm like, yeah, so he'll turn his head if someone's walking up behind me, and he'll turn his head and just sit there and watch him. And then I can see him
Yeah.
out of the corner of my eye because he's always to the left of me. I can look over and be like, oh, okay, someone's coming up behind me, kind of thing. And so, like when I worked at the university, that was really helpful for dealing with all the students running around, and I'm walking through, they had these little tunnels that connected the buildings because I'm in North Dakota and it's fucking cold here in January. So they have these little, we call them the gerbil tubes. They run from building to building. And, he would do so good in there of just walking through it. And he would just, anytime somebody's, behind us, he's just keeping a side eye on them there. Or like, let's take a self checkout, for example. Right. If I'm standing there and going through and scanning items, I'll put him directly behind me and he'll just sit behind me and just sit there and watch people walk by
Yeah.
with it. And, and it's such a simple thing that he's doing in that moment, but it's like pretty freaking cool with it. And, you've got ones that can do, if someone deals with like night terrors and stuff like that, with it, they can wake them up, kind of thing. They can bring them stuff, with it. So there's just so many benefits to them, right? And he travels with me everywhere. He's got the vest he wears and all that. And that's the cool thing is like he's got two different personalities, right? He knows because how was service dog is like when you put them in a vest or something like that, right? They feel that weight on them and they recognize like, hey, it's time to go to work. And he I call him my Eeyore when he's at work because he just kind of is just doom 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 just not really a care in the world, but he'll just he's just content. He's steady, right? When he's in that vest, and I mean, he listens on a dime. He's so good with it. And then you take that vest off when we get home, and he's this 70-pound fucking lab that's just bouncing all around all over the place. And he literally lays in bed on his back with his paws in the air, and just sits there, and he'll sit there and talk and everything else. And here, let me do this. His lazy ass is laying in the bed in the other side of the house because that's what he does. He sleeps like all day when he's home. Hawk, come here. Come here. Come on. So come here. Come say hi. Come say hi. Come here. Good boy.
Get back in time for doggies.
There you are.
Boy, yep,
Here you
just
are.
in time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Up here.
Oh,
Yeah, he is a
Good boy.
cutie.
There he is. There he is. Yes.
Yes.
Yes, you are. So yeah, so it's really incredible, what he can do, and he's got, like I said, he's got this. He squints a lot, which is hilarious, especially when he just woke up with it. But he's got such a good personality, for it, and he's a completely different dog. Like right now, if I'm
Yeah.
out and about with him, he does so good with kids, other animals, all those areas, and that's the beauty of it is they're specifically trained to pretty much go anywhere, right? With it, and you and that's the one way that you can tell a service dog compared to like other dogs is a service dog you really shouldn't see, right? With it, and that can be because when we're out in public and stuff and eating in a restaurant or something like that, he just tucks under the table and just lays there, right, and is just content with the whole thing. And so half the time when we get done eating, we'll get up and like he'll come out and usually he'll shake and stuff because he's been sitting there for an hour or whatever. And he half the time it scares the shit out of like a table next to us because I'll be like, oh my god, there's a dog.
Yeah.
And it's like this 70-pound lab is just crawling out from underneath the table because he's been quiet the entire time.
It's a little different from the emotional support ostrich people takes on to
Yes,
airplane. Yeah.
yes, exactly. Yep. No emotional support peacocks getting onto planes and stuff like that. With it, that actually happened. I don't remember if it was American Airlines. It was like 2016 or something.
Of course it did.
They freaking somebody tried to get a peacock on a plane. Which is also why, fun fact, is why they changed the regulation within the Americans with Disability Act to say specifically dogs because people were using and abusing the crap out of that a decade ago and just like, oh, this is my emotional support hamster,
My emotional support
like,
python.
Yes, exactly.
Yikes.
But yeah, no, they're incredible. Obviously, it's going to vary a little bit, right? Because there's regulations with service animals, you can still get some that are you can tell, right? And you can tell which ones have been through a very rigorous training program and maybe one that's been through a little more laxed or not at all. Because unfortunately that exists, right? I deal with them almost every time I travel. Right, I was in El Paso 2 weeks ago, and there was a dog at the event I was at, and I had Hawk with me, and he's vested up and just killing it, right? He's just sitting there, just kind of looking around, watching everybody, and this other dog comes up, and the dog starts like losing its mind, like he's barking and all this, and getting down and like trying to play, and it's like, like you can't do that, and it's got service dog on the side, and I'm like, is it though?
Yeah.
Because that's the hard part, right? Is people don't realize, like, especially for a service animal, there isn't really. You don't get like some certificate from the government or anything that says like this is a fully qualified trained service animal.
Right.
It's really it comes down to I've got an ID for him that the organization I went through gave me, and it's got all his information on there and everything else and his number tied to the organization and all that. But if somebody just goes out and does the training themselves, it's kind of just buy the vest and call it a day, because especially when it comes to that, the only two things that you can ask someone legally with a service animal is this for some type of disability, and what do they help you deal with?
Right.
Is the gist of it there, and past that you can't ask anything else, right? You can't necessarily ask like what specifically, or like, whoa, what's your disability? That kind of stuff, like it's not allowed, which is also why those questions are worded a little weird there. But yeah, it's like I said, the benefits of them are just incredible. I mean, for me, my family, everything, he does incredible with all 4 kids, and is just a lab, at the end of the day. And we got 20 acres out here, so he just fucking goes. He's so fast when he gets running. It's hilarious. But yeah, no. So he's when he is home, he's just another member of the family kind of thing. But when he's got the vest on and knows it's time to work, then he knows it's time to work, kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, actually, I mean, I guess would it be good? I guess I was thinking, would it be good to tell people what organization you got yours from, so they could try to get a good to make sure it's from a good official source instead of Johnny down the street.
Yeah. No, so I went through Patriot Assistance Dogs. They're out of Detroit Lakes, Minnesota. But I'll tell anybody, just because I can't imagine, a lot of people that are going to be seeing this are going to be in central Minnesota. But if you look up Purina, the dog food company, they actually have a site, or they have a webpage that'll help you find an organization that provides a trained service dog. There, I found it years ago. When I was helping as a VA director for Regiment Gaming, I was helping people navigate different VA processes and helping them, like, hey, go talk to this person, kind of thing, or oh, that's this person, or call this number, kind of thing. So yeah, but I found it years ago there, and it's been super helpful for being able to find that. Like I said, that's the big thing is if they do things like programs like Hawk went through what's called Canine Good Citizen. It's like an additional qualification, right, if you will, for it. So obviously the more, the better, kind of thing. But also realize too, like if anyone's thinking of getting one or anything like that, like realize like it's not that clear cut, especially when it comes to your work. So you really kind of gotta, I don't want to say give and take, but you're gonna have to have a pretty lengthy conversation and explain exactly what you need, kind of thing, if you do have to do that. Because for me, like I had to go out and get like a bunch of different dog beds for the different classrooms I taught in, right? And so then I had one under my desk at work that when I was in my office, and he would just hang out there, kind of thing. But yeah, it's you really become your own ambassador, if you will, when you have a service animal, because you're gonna deal with just people. I've had people walk right up and start trying to like interact with them, and I'm like, you can't do that. And you get everything in the book, right? I've had people be like, I train service animals, and I'm like, well, that would be, if you did, you would know, that what you're doing right now is not
right.
acceptable.
Yeah.
But
not well, apparently. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Or it's like, I think I was coming back from El Paso, and there's this little small like Chihuahua, the tiniest service dog best I've ever seen in my life, just fucking losing its mind
Yeah.
as Hawk walks by. And that's the crazy thing is Hawk literally for almost any dog, right? Of course, at the end of the day, he's still a dog. He's still gonna, he's gonna have his one-offs and things like that, right? Nobody's perfect, but 99.9% of the time, if another dog walks by, he just like is like, whatever, and just it just keeps going. Like he could care less.
That's awesome.
When it comes down to it. Now if he's unvested, he's gonna like go full lab mode and
Yeah.
stick his ass in the air and be like, "Oh, let's play," kind of thing. But
It's fascinating.
so, yeah, can't say enough good things about him.
Yeah. No, I agree. Having a good partner go through life with you. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Evil, you got any questions? I mean,
I actually did.
Okay, good.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really find a good break for it, but you mentioned, like having pushback um, for this kind of treatment and stuff, or not necessarily treatment, but you know, ad- assistance, I guess, would be
Mm-hmm.
the best way to. But I know for sure that ever since these types of programs that you were in were actually implemented, that the number of servicemen for this group has grown probably
Mm-hmm.
exponentially since it was created. So
Mm-hmm.
not only is it something that's already happening, but we're going to see more and more of this, like as these unmanned options become far more popular. So,
Absolutely.
this is something that not only there's already been a need, but we're going to see much more need for these kinds of assistances, actual programs, avenues you know, for us to be able to help these people as
Mm-hmm.
time goes forward. So, you mentioned like just being like a small startup for this, but there's a real need for this to grow. And I feel that the the because of what you mentioned of how these things are overlooked, like
Mm-hmm.
what's the best way to kind of bridge that gap in the knowledge base that people don't understand that this truly is a need. And
Mm-hmm.
without having this kind of personal experience, how do you kind of like navigate that? I would call it a minefield, because like,
Yeah.
there's very clearly a need for resources. It's just,
Mm-hmm.
what can we do to actually bring awareness to this?
Absolutely. And I think the biggest thing right now is exactly what we're doing, right? Is talking about it. Because that's I mean, this is at such a fundamental level, right? To throw out some other things here with it. 2008 is when the MQ-9 came on board, right? Is when it's starting to use. Well, it's 2025, right?
Yeah.
Also means we're about to hit the 20-year mark of that aircraft, and that was also the ramp up time, right? Was 2008 is when the Air Force started realizing, oh shit, we need a ton of these and we need them yesterday. So they started cranking out, development. You had the Obama administration using them constantly. We ramped up to 60 plus aircraft. Called the I can't think of what the acronym is, but 60 plus caps there. It's like combat air patrols there. It's essentially what's on paper, how many aircraft the Air Force has at the time. So they were needing to go up to like 66 or something like that at it back in like 2014. So they cranked up production, cranked up training, right, with the whole thing. But that's the thing is now we're 3 years off from the 20-year mark. So that also means this is going to be the first time that we have people that have sat in this career field and for a full 20 years. Because when this thing started out, it wasn't a bunch of me's, right? Where I came straight out of high school, joined in, they couldn't afford to take every fresh person, right? Because even the cost of basic training, even the cost of, a tech school, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
it still adds up at the end of the day. So what they were doing is they were taking what's called imagery analysis. That career field. It was called the one-in-one career field. Essentially, every job in the military has a code associated with it, just so that they can go, okay, body, seat, yes, right. At that point, and make sure that we have, it's all the bean counters, stuff like that with it. Is really what it boils down to. But hitting that, stride now. isn't what it was back then because they were pulling people from other career fields, right? All the pilots for RPAs back in the day, or remotely piloted aircraft, are F-16 pilots. Right? They came from fucking fighters with
Yeah.
it. So one, you had a bunch of pissed off people that literally got yanked out of their cockpit and thrown into a freaking plane with a lawnmower essentially strapped to its ass. There and so not too many happy people in those early days. I got trained by some of just the most freaking chippiest pilots with it, but they were some of the best too, right? I mean, they'd hold me to my shit, especially my 18, 19-year-old punk ass was getting held to the freaking flames early on because you had a bunch of just badasses that were just like, here you go, this is the way it is, right? Kind of thing. But now, like I said, now obviously we've gone away from that, right? They introduced a specific career path for it called the 18X for the pilot side, where they specifically go in and go for training for RPAs, right? With it. And so where previously it was, oh, you go through, pilot training and then you get kind of shredded out at that point and they say, oh yeah, hey, you're going to, this aircraft or whatever, kind of thing. So they've ramped that up. Supposedly they're going to be ramping up the need for training them next year. They're going back to 150% capacity, which is just insane. I've sat through that. It's not fun, right? 2016, 2017, we were doing the same thing, and it was long ass days, right? And you're doing events every single day, right, with no break, with it. And that's the thing. Like we didn't get days off. Right? You didn't have like an office day or to get caught up with shit or anything like that. It was just constantly either teach somebody right how to do it or you're doing it and you're essentially dealing with that for 6 to 7, 8, 10 hours a day every single day with it. And like I said, that's the biggest difference is people look at it on paper and be like, oh, it's not that big a deal, you got to go home every night with it, and it's like, yeah, but we did this shit non freaking stop and with no breaks, no dwell time, no downtime, anything like that. We didn't even get like a day of just like, all right, hey, you got a bunch of because we still had fucking paperwork and shit, right? We had to do, and other additional duties and stuff like that, reports and crap, and so you didn't have time to do that. You essentially do it after shift most of the time, with it, and it's like, so that was the big aspect to it. Like you were sitting there having to deal with all this extra crap that just made the whole thing way worse, with it. So back to your original statement there, because I love to get on tangent. Is yes, this isn't going anywhere, right? I mean, look at the DoD, right? They just kind of signed a contract with Skydio, which is literally the competitor to DJI, with it. And so, you've got these just. It's going to keep happening, right? And it's going to be out there, and we're just really trying to get ahead of it. And so that's the hard piece right now is the people that haven't sat in that box and hacked that mission day in and day out do not understand how big of an impact this is having on the operators. Even the people that have sat there and done that years and years and years ago turn around and go, well, no one's talking about it, so it's not a big deal. And it's like, no one's talking about it because we've created this really weird ecosystem where people can't talk about shit when it comes to this, right? They don't talk about what they did. They don't talk about the missions. They don't talk about the mental health. They don't talk about anything because we got it beat into us, 10 years ago of like, you don't say shit about any of this because, it's the best kept secret, in the United States. And it's like, sitting right there in front of under everybody's nose kind of thing, which led to everybody going, okay, well, then I'm not going to talk about how it's affecting me, mentally. With it. Now you've got a bunch of stigmas that you're running around with, that are, I mean, literally getting guys killed. The schoolhouse for it is down at Holloman, and we lost an instructor pilot earlier this year. It's a suicide down there, and that's the hard part. Is everybody looks at those, goes, oh well, well they were going through a divorce, so it was that, and it's like, no, it was the mental health aspect to it. It's just the divorce was a layer to it. It's like looking at, a drunk driver and being like, well, his tire blew out, so that's why he went off the road. And it's like, no, the underlying cause was he was drunk and the tire blew out because he hit a fucking curb, and then crashed into a tree. So it's the short sightedness of it. Unfortunately, is getting guys killed, and that's why at this point it's like, well, I'm gonna keep doing what I'm doing because there's definitely the people out there that it's helping, and being able to bring a voice to been needed for 20 years, but has just nobody's been able to do it because no one's understood and really sat back and looked at the implications, and also had the experience of being able to relate to this career field.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else, but I definitely want you. Okay, so you know what? Let's make sure and get this in before anything. Tell the people how they can find the organization, the Discord, and how they can and what they can do to be involved, how they can get involved, that kind of like. What can they do?
Absolutely. So we're on pretty much every social media out there under Remote Warrior. See, there some asshole took remotewarrior.com, so I had to change it there. But yes, underneath there, we've also got remotewarriorllc.com, where we've got a lot of our resources. We've got our resource hub there, and I'll be sure to get you the link for that for the card site
Yes,
there.
please.
Get you the link for it. I'm so used to saying that on podcasts. With it, you already have the link.
Yeah,
but,
that's true.
Yeah. But yes, make sure we let's get those links hammered out there, and then like I said, we've got I've got a whole podcast library of areas I've talked this. Right, I'm about to add the Business Insider one later this afternoon, so that one will be up there too, with it, and then like we said, right, we fund this, all off of donations and different things there. Eventually, we'll get the tax write-off status with the nonprofit, but even for right now, we have Venmo, we're LLC, we have, our what's called Ko-Fi campaigns, and all that stuff's on the website too. We go and do either like single-time donations, or even there's an option for monthly subscriptions that start at like $100 a month. And again, just like we talked about, right, that helps us ship some of these, because we'll ship out like the panic packs and stuff to remote combat warriors for free at no cost to them. So that's a lot of and then or guides. We have physical guides here that built with it, and essentially just a way to put plain language into ways that people may be feeling. Right? It's not meant to be clinical. It's not to be like, oh, this is gonna cure you or anything crazy. It's just to be able to put something in writing to say, hey, it's okay. Kind of thing. It's all right if you're feeling this way or experiencing these things, because it's completely freaking normal, right?
Yeah.
And I know that because the one piece that I didn't talk about, what kind of really set this thing ablaze was I tried to take, there's a PTSD checklist that like the VA uses and almost every mental health clinician in the country uses, called the PCL-5, and I got really tired of that because it misses so many pieces to remote warfare, right? It misses identity crisis, it misses moral theory. So that's why that study exists, is because I essentially stripped that thing down, rebuilt it, and then put it out and trying to just get like 10 people to take a different version, if you will, of it. And I got over 200 responses in 96 hours on it. And so I took that data and then started, running it against other stuff and things like that, and really looking at like, what can I pull from this? So that's been a lot of, the statistical analysis with this too, and being able to bring in the data to it, go, okay, holy shit, this is huge. And that's where your studies that, I'm hoping to get also run in tandem a study at some of the active duty units that it's a little bit more pointed and to the point, and can ask questions in a way better way than just the generic crap, right? I mean, it's like if you fill out a freaking any form anywhere, right, and you get to that question, for anything, and it's like you're like, well, this doesn't really fucking apply to me, but I guess I'll circle that box or circle that number, kind of thing. It's you're paying lip service to it, right? And so it's really trying to do a lot better for the community in that way too, and have actually an intake for them that's actually applicable, right? And so we can stop just doing this square peg round hole and then go, well, I don't know why they're not cured. And it's like, well, you're fucking off in right field here, trying to cure them for something that they don't have, kind of thing, or you're setting a baseline that isn't applicable for what their experience, right? Because a lot of things right now look at intake as either your boots on the ground or right, and that's a big issue with it, because we sit in this middle ground, with it, and there's plenty of people that aren't going to understand it, but for those that have been through it and do, it's absolutely a major gap in the system. And it comes down to, at the end of the day, and I say this a lot, is like, all right, if you want to continue with national security, guess what? You have to freaking take care of your people, because the people that leave the military are the ones that go swap the flight suit for a polo and go and fill those government contract roles to do this shit and really massive shitholes in this world, that they're having to deal with. And because you got to pay them a ton, right? You can't throw them out. You can't drop them in the middle of a freaking desert or, the jungle or something like that and be like, oh yeah, all right, you're good to go. It's the reason that those are all contract, companies that have to handle that stuff. So it really plays into the whole piece of it, and trying to look at, from start to finish, let's take care of these people. Because again, I'm not sitting here like bashing it and going, oh, we need to, stop doing this and all this crazy stuff. No, we just need to take care of these people better, at the end of the day. And that way it's better for them, better for their families, and better for the country as a whole.
Love it. Okay. Well, I appreciate it, man. We nailed right around an hour, and you filled out all the information. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it last time you were on here. I enjoyed it this time. I think it's very informative, and I just appreciate you giving me your time, because I know you are an exceptionally busy man. So, excuse me. But yeah. Well, anyway, I appreciate you, brother. And please, everybody who's been able to, I'm sure our podcast will reach almost as many people as Business Insider. It's Business Insider and then my podcast. But if you're interested, please absolutely get in touch with the organization. Get in touch with Tanner, myself. A lot of will probably have my Discord, so get through me too. And yeah, just keep your head on a swivel and help us out. I think we do good things, and we're helping people stay sane. So
absolutely.
Anyway, y'all have a good rest of your week. Please I'm sorry, I have to do this. This is my YouTube thing. Like, subscribe, comment, because that's how the video gets traction. So yeah, thank you. Yeah, see, he knows. And have a blessed rest of your week.